A stunning new image of 3IATLAS has just obliterated everything we thought we understood about interstellar comets. This is a revelation NASA held back for weeks, and the implications are staggering. Captured by SPHEX of the outer reaches of Jupiter's orbit, 3IATLAS isn't behaving like any comet in the textbooks. Instead of spewing water vapor as every model predicted, it's shrouded in a colossal blood-red sphere stretching 348,000 kilometers across, nearly the distance from Earth to Moon, violently venting carbon dioxide at 70 kilograms per second while releasing almost no water whatsoever. Why would NASA suppress a discovery that shatters every existing model? Did they hesitate because 3IATLAS defies all known theories, or because it represents something no scientist has dared to name publicly? The answer may lie in that unexpected coma and the profound stakes of what we're on the verge of discovering. When SPHEX detected a carbon dioxide-dominated coma at 3.2 astronomical units from the Sun, the data immediately circulated among NASA mission leads and comet specialists. The image revealed something extraordinary: a vast blood-red shell, perfectly smooth, unbroken, and eerily symmetric. There were no jets, no tail, no trace of the water vapor that should have dominated at this distance. It matched nothing in our catalog of known solar system comets. NASA's official policy is clear. Observational data must be released to the public within 60 days. But this wasn't routine data. This was an object from another star system venting carbon dioxide in quantities and patterns that defied explanation. Outside the agency, astronomers began to speculate. Was the delay simply a matter of scientific caution, or did it reflect genuine confusion? Did the mission team need additional time to verify their instrument calibration, or were they hesitating because the measurements made absolutely no sense? In a field where groundbreaking discoveries are typically announced with fanfare, the prolonged silence felt ominous and deliberate. The stakes couldn't be higher. If this phenomenon is natural, then our entire understanding of comet science needs to be fundamentally rewritten. If it isn't natural, the implications reach far beyond astronomy. The data is now public, but the real questions are only beginning to emerge. At 3.2 astronomical units from the Sun, just beyond Mars and grazing Jupiter's orbital path, 3IATLAS revealed something unprecedented in comet science. SPHEX, NASA's advanced infrared surveyor, captured the comet in mid-August 2025, precisely when it should have been showing the first quiet signs of activity if it followed conventional behavior. Instead, the data showed a carbon dioxide coma so massive it dwarfed the nucleus itself. The gaseous shell extended 348,000 kilometers in all directions from the comet's core, nearly the full distance between Earth and the Moon, but spherically. Not a tail streaming behind it, not an asymmetric spray of material, but a perfect sphere. The measurements defy all routine expectations. SPHEX recorded carbon dioxide streaming off the comet at approximately 70 kilograms per second. That translates to 9.44 times 10 superscript 2 molecules escaping into space every single second. Meanwhile, water vapor, the signature component of nearly every known comet, barely registered on instruments. Even accounting for measurement uncertainties, the upper limit for H2O outgassing at this distance was just 4.5 kilograms per second. There were no jets, no blue streaks of ionized gas, no evidence of the classic water-driven tail that characterizes most comets when they cross the frost line. Instead, a blood-red fog of CO2, dense, uniform, and hauntingly smooth. This behavior is completely unprecedented at 3.2 astronomical units in our solar system. Comets typically awaken as they approach the Sun, their surfaces warming progressively until buried water ice begins to sublimate. That water vapor drives the spectacular show we associate with comets, building magnificent tails, feeding the luminous coma, carrying dust and organic molecules outward into space. But 3IATLAS shattered that pattern entirely. Here, carbon dioxide dominates overwhelmingly. The coma maintains near-perfect symmetry, showing none of the chaotic jets or localized explosive outbursts that water activity typically produces. The gas expands uniformly in all directions, forming a shell rather than the expected streamer configuration. Both the scale and the chemistry are complete outliers. Astronomers do expect some carbon dioxide activity in comets, particularly near the frost line boundary, but never at this magnitude or with this character. The production rate, the flawless smoothness of the distribution, and the sheer immensity of the coma, these details forced every specialist who examined the data to look again, searching for errors that weren't there. If water ice is present within 3IATLAS, it must be buried extraordinarily deep or locked away by some mechanism that renders it completely invisible to SPHX's sophisticated sensors. The numbers paint a stark and simple picture. At a distance where water should utterly dominate comet behavior, carbon dioxide has seized complete control, fundamentally rewriting the script for what a comet can be. The anomaly isn't subtle or ambiguous. It's measured in hundreds of thousands of kilometers, in kilograms per second, and in the conspicuous absence of everything familiar. Hubble's initial observation of 3IATLAS on July 21st, 2025, established the baseline measurements. The data indicated a nucleus smaller than 1 kilometer in diameter, perhaps only 300 to 500 meters across, concealed within a faint, expanding coma. That estimate came from high-resolution imaging analysis, where the research team painstakingly subtracted the contributions from dust and gas to isolate and measure the solid core. But when SPHX conducted its infrared scans several weeks later, the numbers told a radically different story. The total reflected light measured at 1 micron wavelength was off the charts, far brighter than a sublimeter core could possibly produce under any conventional interpretation. If all that luminous flux originated from a nucleus itself, the mathematical analysis pointed to a body nearly 46 kilometers across. That's not a minor discrepancy or a rounding error in the calculations. That's a difference of almost 2 full orders of magnitude, like mistaking a house for a small city. The paradox deepened when researchers examined the coma's geometric properties. SPHX didn't detect the chaotic jets or irregular patchy plumes that characterize most active comets. Instead, every viewing angle revealed the same thing: smooth, uniform brightness, as if sunlight were bouncing off a perfectly distributed cloud of particles. The reflectivity pattern was almost mirror-like, scattering incoming light evenly in every direction with no preferential orientation. There were no hot spots, no shadows, no hints of a solid nucleus visible through gaps in the coma. Photometric models attempted to reconcile this glaring contradiction. If the coma's dust grains are exceptionally tiny and ice-coated, they could scatter sunlight with remarkable efficiency, dramatically boosting the apparent brightness without requiring a giant solid core. But implementing this explanation would mean that over 99% of the light reaching SPHX's detectors originated from microscopic particles suspended in the coma, not from the nucleus itself. The measurements forced an uncomfortable choice. Either 3IATLAS conceals a massive unseen core rivaling the largest comets ever discovered in our solar system, or the coma surrounding it is so extraordinarily dense and composed of such finely grained particles that it functions as a nearly perfect reflective shell, bouncing and diffusing sunlight uniformly in all directions. Instrument teams on both missions, Hubble and SPHX, ran their calculations repeatedly, checking every assumption. They verified the flux measurements, analyzed the light scattering angles, modeled various dust grain size distributions, and scrutinized every variable. Yet the fundamental dilemma persisted stubbornly. Hubble's razor-sharp optical vision insists the nucleus is small. SPHX's brightness measurements insist it must be enormous. And the coma's uncanny symmetry refuses to favor either interpretation. The core question hangs in the data, unresolved and urgent. Is 3IATLAS a behemoth in disguise, or has it somehow mastered the art of optical camouflage, its true nature concealed behind a veil entirely of its own creation? Mainstream comet science marshals its defense with hard numbers and established patterns, not speculation or intuition. At 3.2 astronomical units from the Sun, 3IATLAS vents carbon dioxide in a smooth, globe-like shell unprecedented in the observational record. There are no jets, no streaming tail, just an expanding sphere of gas maintaining remarkable geometric perfection. The carbon dioxide outflow rate measures approximately 70 kilograms per second, a substantial rate by any standard. Water vapor, typically the dominant volatile at this distance from the Sun, remains conspicuously absent from the spectrum. Theoretical models scramble to find stable footing. One possibility, perhaps a thermally insulating blanket of carbon dioxide ice and gas, keeps the surface temperature low enough to prevent water sublimation. Another scenario suggests that water ice lies buried deep beneath multiple meters of dust and refractory material, effectively shielded from direct sunlight. A third option proposes surface chemistry so radically different from known comets that it resists all conventional analysis. Each theoretical framework receives scrutiny and provisional scoring. The carbon dioxide blanket hypothesis fits the observed coma symmetry reasonably well, but it cannot fully explain the near-total absence of water. The deep buried ice scenario works elegantly on paper, but a complete lack of even trace water vapor emissions remains difficult to reconcile with sublimation physics. Unusual surface chemistry remains plausible in principle, but direct supporting evidence is frustratingly thin. The artifact hypothesis sits at the edge of serious scientific discourse, championed most vocally by astrophysicist Avi Loeb. He points specifically to the geometry, the symmetry, and the coma's eerie perfection as potential indicators. No tail, no localized hotspots, no irregularities whatsoever. He poses a provocative question. Could this be a shell rather than a cloud, a constructed structure rather than a natural physical process? Most astronomers remain unconvinced. They weigh the available evidence carefully. Reproducible spectroscopic measurements, familiar if extreme chemistry, and outgassing mechanisms that, while unusual, remain within the bounds of known physics. The scientific consensus holds that 3IATLAS is decidedly odd, but still within the realm of cosmic probability and natural phenomena. Loeb's hypothesis scores low on available supporting evidence, but high on theoretical imagination. It hasn't been definitively ruled out, but neither is it required by the current data. The ghost of Oumuamua lingers in the background of this debate. That enigmatic object, with its unusual elongated shape and unexplained non-gravitational acceleration, left the scientific community with more profound questions than satisfying answers. 3IATLAS is fundamentally different. It glows visibly. It vents detectable gases. It follows identifiable physical laws, just not the specific ones anyone predicted or expected. Each interpretive camp maintains its own tally of evidence. Natural explanations, strong foundational support, but stretched to accommodate extreme observations. Artifact hypothesis, theoretically possible but critically lacking empirical proof. The next observational phase, as 3IATLAS moves closer to the Sun, experiencing increased heating and hopefully generating more diagnostic data, will likely tip the scales decisively. Until that crucial moment arrives, all the evidence sits in the open scientific literature, accessible and debated, waiting for the observation or measurement that will make it lean decisively one way or the other. In August 2025, NASA's HFY telescope captured comprehensive infrared imaging of 3IATLAS, revealing a 348,000-kilometer wide carbon dioxide coma, with outgassing rates hovering around 70 kilograms per second and virtually no detectable water vapor. An absolutely unprecedented spectroscopic signature for any comet at 3.2 astronomical units from the Sun. Multiple weeks elapsed before NASA released this data publicly, adding another layer to the deepening mystery. Hubble's earlier analysis estimated the solid nucleus at merely 300 to 500 meters in diameter. But the extreme brightness measured by SPHY suggests either a vastly larger core, possibly up to 46 kilometers across, or an unusually efficient light-scattering coma with near-perfect reflective properties. Experts across the field unanimously agree. No existing comet formation or evolution model successfully predicts such a massive, geometrically symmetric carbon dioxide envelope at this distance from the Sun. Mainstream theoretical approaches invoke scenarios like deeply buried water ice reservoirs or exotic surface chemistry unique to interstellar objects. Meanwhile, a vocal minority of researchers, including Avi Loeb, continue to raise the artifact hypothesis as a legitimate avenue of inquiry. Despite months of extensive analysis by multiple independent research teams, the fundamental nature of 3IATLAS remains completely unresolved. With the object now moving on a trajectory closer to the Sun, where increased solar heating should trigger more dramatic activity, the entire scientific community awaits the next round of observational data with intense anticipation. For now, 3IATLAS stands as one of astronomy's rarest enigmas, directly challenging our accumulated knowledge about interstellar visitors and serving as a humbling reminder that some of the cosmos' most profound questions remain tantalizingly open, waiting for the evidence that will finally provide answers. October 14th, 2025, 2:47 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The James Webb Space Telescope swung into position, its golden mirrors capturing 3IATLAS at 2.1 astronomical units, deep inside the frost line, where water should have been erupting violently from the surface. Every major observatory on Earth was watching. This was the moment that would either confirm the natural explanation or shatter it completely. Dr. Sarachin sat in the darkened control room at Goddard Space Flight Center, her coffee untouched and cold. Around her, screens flickered with incoming spectroscopic data. The near-infrared spectrograph hummed through its exposure sequence, peeling back the chemical fingerprint of mysterious coma layer by layer. Then the first spectrum appeared on the primary display. The room fell silent. That's impossible, whispered a voice in the back. Someone else swore softly. Dr. Chin leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as she zoomed in on the spectral lines. The carbon dioxide signature was there, still dominant, still inexplicable. But now there was something else, something that made her breath catch in her throat. Embedded within the CO2 envelope, JWST detected a secondary structure, a series of nested shells, each one approximately 2,500 kilometers apart, concentric and precise. The shells weren't made of gas or dust. They were gaps, voids in the coma where absolutely nothing existed. Perfect empty spheres, mathematically exact, repeating at intervals that corresponded to no known physical process. Run the analysis again, Dr. Chen ordered, her voice barely steady. Check for instrumental artifacts. Check everything. They checked 3 times. 4. The pattern held. But it was the thermal imaging that delivered the final shock. When JWST's mid-infrared instrument mapped the temperature distribution across the coma, it revealed something that violated every principle of thermodynamics. The outer shell, the one facing the sun, the one that should have been hottest, was radiating at 2.7 Kelvin, the exact temperature of the cosmic microwave background, the precise temperature of empty space. It wasn't being heated by the sun at all. Whatever lay at the heart of 3IATLAS was actively cooling the coma, maintaining it at near absolute zero, despite the sun's radiation. No sublimation process, no natural outgassing, no comet ever observed could do this. We need to see the nucleus, Dr. Chen said quietly. We need to see what's underneath that shell. The JWST team redirected the coronagraph, a specialized instrument designed to block out bright sources, and reveal faint structures hidden behind them. As the blood-red coma was digitally suppressed, frame by frame, the image of the core began to resolve. The room erupted in chaos. The nucleus wasn't a jagged, irregular lump of ice and rock, like every comet ever photographed. It was geometric, a perfect prolate spheroid, an elongated oval, measuring approximately 400 meters in length and 150 meters at its widest point. Its surface wasn't rough or cratered. It was smooth, almost polished, with a reflectivity that varied in regular patterns across its surface. And it was rotating, not tumbling chaotically as natural objects do, but rotating on a single stable axis with a period of exactly 8.0 hours. No wobble, no precession, perfect rotational stability. Get me the light curve data from the last 3 months, Dr. Chen demanded. An assistant pulled up the historical observations from ground-based telescopes. The rotation period had remained constant to within 1,000th of a second for 3 months. Through temperature changes, through gravitational perturbation from Jupiter, through everything. Natural objects don't do that. Natural objects can't do that. The data kept coming, each new measurement more unsettling than the last. High-resolution radar from Arecibo's successor facility detected surface features, regular geometric patterns etched into the nucleus, repeating every 23 meters. Not fractures, not impact craters. Patterns. Someone had finally dared to speak the word aloud. Manufactured. Dr. Chen's phone buzzed. It was a priority message from the director of NASA. The subject line read, "Immediate telecon, classification, review required." She stared at the screen in her hand, then back at the image of 3IATLAS on the main display. That impossible, perfect shape, that blood-red shroud of precisely controlled gas, those nesospherical voids that shouldn't exist. Her mind raced through the implications. If this was manufactured, who made it? When? For what purpose? Was it a probe, like Voyager, sent from another civilization? Or was it something else? A beacon, a warning, a test? And the most unsettling question of all, if it was deliberately sent to our solar system, why was it slowing down? Because it was slowing down. The trajectory analysis team had noticed it 3 days ago, but hadn't understood what they were seeing. 3IATLAS was decelerating at a rate of 0.000113 meters per second squared. Subtle enough to be missed initially, but absolutely real. It wasn't outgassing thrust. It wasn't gravitational perturbation. It was controlled propulsion. The object that had been classified as an interstellar comet was performing a braking maneuver, adjusting its trajectory with precision. The new orbital calculations were already coming in. If the deceleration continued at this rate, 3IATLAS wouldn't complete a hyperbolic flyby of the Sun. It would enter a stable elliptical orbit, looping through the inner solar system every 47 years. It was parking itself in our solar system. Dr. Chen looked around the control room at her colleagues, astronomers, engineers, physicists, all staring at the same impossible data. Some looked terrified. Others looked exhilarated. All of them knew that in the span of a single night, humanity's place in the cosmos had fundamentally changed. "Start drafting the announcement," she said finally, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "We need to tell them what we found." "Tell them what exactly?" asked her deputy, his face pale. Dr. Chen turned back to the screen, to that perfect elongated form wrapped in its blood-red sphere, rotating with mechanical precision to the darkness between worlds. "Tell them we're not alone," she said quietly. "And tell them that whatever sent 3IATLAS, it wants us to know." The announcement sent shockwaves through every nation on Earth. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session. Religious leaders offered prayers and interpretations. Scientists debated on every news channel. Social media exploded with theories, hopes, and fears. But in the quiet halls of NASA's Deep Space Network, another signal was being analyzed, one that hadn't been mentioned in the public announcement, one that Dr. Chun and a handful of others were still trying to understand. Because 3IATLAS wasn't just slowing down anymore. It was broadcasting, a repeating sequence of radio pulses at 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, the universal frequency that any technological civilization would monitor. The pattern was complex, mathematical, unmistakably artificial. And embedded within those pulses was something that made the hairs on Dr. Chen's neck stand up. A countdown. 27 days remaining until 3IATLAS reached its target orbital position. 27 days until whatever this object was designed to do would begin. Dr. Chen sat alone in her office, staring at the decoded signal on her screen, and wondered whether humanity was ready for first contact, or if ready even mattered anymore. The clock was ticking, and somewhere out in the darkness beyond Jupiter, wrapped in an impossible shroud of red, 3IATLAS continued its patient, inevitable approach toward the inner solar system, carried with it answers to questions humanity had asked for millennia, and perhaps questions we hadn't yet thought to fear. Dr. Chen hadn't slept properly in 13 days. None of them had. The Deep Space Network facilities had transformed into round-the-clock operation centers, with rotating teams analyzing every microsecond of data streaming from 3IATLAS. The countdown signal had become more complex. What started as simple pulses had evolved into layered transmissions, multiple frequencies carrying different information streams simultaneously. The communications team had isolated at least 7 distinct channels, each broadcasting what appeared to be different types of data. Channel 1 contained the countdown. 13 days, 7 hours, 23 minutes remaining. Channel 2 was mathematical. Prime numbers, geometric sequences, fundamental constants of physics. A Rosetta Stone, some called it, a way to establish common ground. Channel 3 was the one that had everyone arguing. It appeared to be coordinates, spatial references using pulsars as fixed points, exactly how humanity had encoded Earth's location on the Voyager Golden Record 50 years earlier. But these coordinates didn't point to any known star system. They pointed to a region of space in the direction of the constellation Ophiuchus, 470 light-years away. "It's telling us where it came from," suggested Dr. James Rodriguez, the lead communications specialist. "Or where it's been," Dr. Chen countered, "studying the data. These pulsar timings are offset. This coordinate system describes where those pulsars were approximately 470 years ago, not now." The implication hung heavy in the air. If 3IATLAS had traveled 470 light-years to reach Earth, it had been launched nearly 5 centuries ago, long before humanity had radio, long before we'd given any indication we existed. Someone or something had sent this object toward Earth when Leonardo da Vinci was painting the Mona Lisa, when Columbus was sailing to the Americas, when humanity still believed the sun revolved around the Earth. They had known we were here. They had always known. But it was Channel 4 that kept Dr. Chen awake at night. Channel 4 was organic data, biochemistry, complex molecular structures that matched nothing in Earth's databases, but followed patterns that were unmistakably biological. Amino acids, but not the 20 standard ones. Nucleotides, but in configurations that suggested an entirely different genetic architecture. It was sending us its biology, its evolutionary history, its chemistry. "It's introducing itself," whispered Dr. Chen's deputy, staring at the molecular diagrams filling the screens. The NSA had tried to classify Channel 4 immediately. The implications were too sensitive. They argued, if this information described an alien biochemistry, it could revolutionize medicine, genetics, synthetic biology, or become a weapon. But the data was already out. Amateur radio operators worldwide were picking up the signals. Universities, private observatories, even backyard enthusiasts were recording and analyzing the transmissions. You couldn't classify first contact. On day 14, as Dr. Chen reviewed the latest trajectory calculations, something new appeared. Channel 5 activated for first time. Images, not photographs. The resolution was far too high for that. These were three-dimensional holographic datasets that could be reconstructed into visual information. The first image showed a planetary system, a yellow-white star with 6 worlds. The 4th planet from the star was highlighted, marked with geometric symbols. Their home. The next image showed the same planet in detail. Continents and oceans, but the land masses were unfamiliar. The ocean colors a deep violet rather than Earth's blue. Vast cities sprawled across the landscapes. Not the chaotic growth of human settlements, but geometric patterns that suggested completely different principles of urban design. And then came the image that made Dr. Chen's blood run cold. The planet's surface was scorched. The oceans were gone. The cities were ruins. The entire world was a burned-out husk, its atmosphere stripped away, its surface cratered and dead. "When was this?" someone asked. The next transmission answered. A timestamp, encoded in the same mathematical language they'd established. A date relative to the pulsar positions. 463 years ago. 7 years after 3IATLAS had been launched. "They're extinct," Dr. Rodriguez said, his voice hollow. "Whatever civilization built this probe, they didn't survive. Or they evacuated," another scientist suggested desperately. "Maybe they had warning. Maybe they left." But the images kept coming. Stellar observations showing a neighboring star undergoing catastrophic instability. Gamma-ray bursts. Superflares. A stellar event that had sterilized every planet in that system, cooking them with radiation that no biological life could survive. 3IATLAS wasn't just a probe. It was a memorial, a time capsule, a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean by a civilization that knew it was about to die. "Look at this," Dr. Chen said, pulling up Channel 6, which had activated a moment ago. "It's showing us their evolution, their history." The images flowed like a documentary assembled by alien hands. Creatures unlike anything on Earth, radially symmetric beings with bioluminescent patterns, moving through dense forests of what looked like crystalline vegetation. Cities rising from barren plains, technology advancing, spaceflight, the discovery of other worlds, and then the construction of 3IATLAS. The images showed thousands of these beings working together, assembling probe in orbit around their dying world. They knew what was coming. They knew they had only years left. So they built a message. They encoded everything they were, their science, their art, their biology, their history, into a single probe. And they sent it to a world they detected 470 light years away, a world with oxygen in its atmosphere, water on its surface, and radio emissions leaking into space. They sent it to Earth. Why us? Someone asked. Why Earth? Channel 7 flickered to life, and Dr. Chen understood. The final channel contained spectroscopic data, analysis of Earth's atmosphere taken from 470 light years away, captured by instruments we couldn't even imagine. But the data wasn't from the present. It was historical, observations made at different intervals. Earth's atmosphere 470 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago. They've been watching us evolve, watching our technology develop, watching our radio signals grow stronger. The message was clear. You're not alone. You never were. We watched you. We waited. And when we knew we would die, we sent you everything we were, so that something of us would survive. The countdown, Dr. Chen said suddenly, pulling up the timer. 12 days, 19 hours, for minutes. What happens when it reaches zero? Dr. Rodriguez had already been analyzing the trajectory data. He pulled up a three-dimensional orbital diagram. 3IATLAS will reach perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, in exactly 12 days, 19 hours, and 4 minutes. It will pass within 0.3 astronomical units, closer than Mercury. The heat will destroy it, someone said. No, Dr. Chen said, studying the deceleration patterns. Look at the precision of its maneuvers. It's not trying to avoid the Sun. It's aiming for that exact distance. She ran the calculations, cross-referencing the signal strength predictions with solar proximity. Her hands froze on the keyboard. The CO2 shell, she breathed. It's not a thermal shroud. It's an antenna. The physics suddenly made terrible, beautiful sense. At perihelion, with the Sun's radiation superheating the carbon dioxide envelope, the entire 348,000-kilometer sphere would become a massive plasma antenna. The broadcast power would increase by orders of magnitude. Every piece of data stored within 3IATLAS would be transmitted across the solar system with enough power to reach the Kuiper Belt, the Oort cloud, even interstellar space. It was going to make itself heard. It's a beacon, Dr. Rodriguez whispered. A monument. It's going to shout their existence to the entire galaxy. No, Dr. Chen corrected, her eyes locked on the countdown. Not just their existence. Ours too. Look at Channel 2, the mathematical sequences. They've been incorporating our radio transmissions into the broadcast. Our music, our television, our messages to space. It's weaving us into their story. The implications settled over the room like a weight. In 12 days, 3IATLAS would transform into the most powerful radio transmitter in the solar system. It would broadcast the entire history of an extinct alien civilization to anyone listening across hundreds of light years. And embedded in that broadcast would be humanity's signature, proof that the universe's lonely survivors have been found, that another young civilization had received their message, that we had borne witness to their existence. We need to respond, someone said. We need to send something back. Send what? Dr. Rodriguez asked. They're dead. They've been dead for centuries. Dr. Chen stood, staring at the image still frozen on the screen. Those radially symmetric beings, working together to build their final gift to the cosmos. We send them confirmation, she said quietly. We send them proof that their message arrived, that they weren't forgotten, that they mattered. She turned to face the room. We have 12 days to compile everything that makes humanity worth knowing. Our art, our science, our history, our dreams. We transmit all back toward Ophiuchus, toward where they were, even if no one's there to receive it, even if it just travels through empty space forever. Why? Someone asked. Dr. Chen looked back at the screen, at those alien beings who had known they were about to die, who had spent their final years building a bridge across the void. Because, she said, they sent us everything they were. The least we can do is tell them who we became. The entire world watched. Every telescope on Earth was pointed toward the sun's glare, tracking the small, impossible object making its closest approach. The International Space Station had been repositioned for optimal viewing. Satellites had been reoriented. Humanity held its collective breath. Dr. Chen sat in the control room at Goddard, surrounded by her team, by dignitaries, by cameras broadcasting to 5 billion people. The countdown on the screen ticked toward 0. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. At T-minus 30 seconds, something changed. The carbon dioxide envelope, which had maintained its blood-red color for months, began to shimmer. The molecules were heating, transforming into plasma as they approached the sun's intense radiation. 10 seconds. 5. 0. The transformation was instantaneous. The entire 348,000-kilometer sphere ignited, not with fire, but with pure electromagnetic radiation. The plasma antenna activated across every frequency from extreme low to extreme high. Radio telescopes worldwide screamed with signal overload. The broadcast had begun. Channel upon channel of data flooded outward at the speed of light. Mathematics, biology, history, images, music. Yes, they had music, though it sounded like nothing human ears had ever imagined. And woven through it all, like threads of gold through ancient fabric, was humanity's response. Our message back to them. Bach and Beethoven alongside their symphonies. The pyramids and the ISS alongside their megastructures. DNA helixes and their biochemistry. Einstein's equations and their physics. Our photographs of Earth, blue and alive, next to their images of their dead world. 2 civilizations, separated by 470 light-years and centuries of time, speaking to each other across the infinite dark. The broadcast continued for 6 hours as 3IATLAS arced around the sun. Then, as it began its outward trajectory, the signal started to fade. The plasma cooled. The blood-red sphere dimmed back to darkness. But the message was out there now, racing away from the sun at the speed of light, carrying the legacy of 2 civilizations, one extinct, one just beginning to understand its place in the cosmos. Dr. Chen watched the signal strength drop to nothing. Around her, the room was silent except for the soft sound of someone crying. "It's done," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "No," Dr. Chen corrected, standing slowly. "It's begun." Because they're on the edge of detection, the instruments had picked up something new, a change in 3IATLAS's trajectory. Not random, not natural. It was turning. The probe wasn't leaving the solar system. It had completed its mission, its primary mission, but now it was adjusting course, using the sun's gravity to slingshot into a new orbit. The calculations came through moments later. Target, Earth. Estimated arrival, 14 months. "It's coming home," someone whispered. Dr. Chen stared at the trajectory plot, her mind racing. Why? What more could it possibly have to show us? Unless the broadcast wasn't the end. It was the invitation. She pulled up the archive transmissions from Channel 5, the images of that dead world. Scrolled back through the catastrophe, past the destruction, to the images of that civilization at its height. And there in the corner of one image, almost too small to notice, was something that had been overlooked in the chaos of the past 2 weeks. A structure, an orbital platform. And on that platform, visible in the enhanced resolution, were thousands of cylinders, sleek, identical, arranged in precise geometric patterns. Storage vessels, genetic banks. "Oh my God," Dr. Chen breathed. The probe hadn't just carried their history. It had carried their future. And now it was bringing that future to the only world in the galaxy where it might still have a chance to bloom, to be continued.